They say a man is not defined by how many times he falls. He's defined by the moment he decides to stop counting the falls and starts counting the lessons. Most people think success is a straight line. They see the trophy, the mountaintop, and the smile, but they don't see the dark rooms, the empty bank accounts, and the quiet moments of despair where a man stares into the mirror and doesn't recognize the person looking back. Failure isn't a wall, it is a weight, and if you carry it long enough, it either breaks you or it builds the kind of muscle that can move mountains. Jack was an ordinary man living in a small, quiet town in the heart of America. He had a modest apartment, a desk job he didn't love, and a dream that kept him awake at night. He wanted to build something of his own. He wanted to prove that a kid from a blue-collar family could change the world with an idea. But Jack had a problem. He was an expert at failing. His first business idea was a small tech repair shop. He poured his savings into it. He worked 16-hour days. 6 months later, the doors were locked by the sheriff. He lost everything. His second attempt was a local delivery service. He used his credit cards to buy a used van. Within a year, the van broke down, the debt piled up, and Jack was back to working a job he hated just to pay for his mistakes. Friends stopped calling. Family members gave him that look, the look of pity. They didn't see a visionary anymore. They saw a man who didn't know when to quit. They saw a man who was wasting his life chasing ghosts. The lowest point came on a cold Tuesday in November. Jack sat in his car in a grocery store parking lot. He had exactly $4 in his pocket. He couldn't even afford a full meal. He sat there, hands gripping the steering wheel until his knuckles turned white. He felt the hot sting of tears. It wasn't just about the money, it was the humiliation. It was the voice in his head that whispered, "Maybe they're right, maybe you're just not good enough." He walked into a small diner nearby just to get out of the wind. He ordered a coffee, the cheapest thing on the menu. He sat in the back booth, his head in his hands. An old man sat at the counter. He was wearing a worn-out work jacket and a cap. He noticed Jack. He didn't offer a hollow greeting. He just looked at Jack's trembling hands and said, "The iron only gets strong when it stays in the fire." Jack looked up, confused. The old man continued, "Most people jump out of the fire the second it gets hot. They go back to being cold and safe. But the ones who stay in, the ones who let the heat burn away the weak parts, they become steel." Jack didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The words hit him like a physical blow. He realized he had been looking at his failures as scars. He hadn't realized they were his armor. He went home that night and didn't look at his bank balance. He looked at his notes. He looked at why the first business failed. He looked at why the second one collapsed. He realized he had the passion, but he lacked the discipline. He had the dream, but he lacked the foundation. He started small. He didn't ask for a loan. He didn't look for a shortcut. He took a second job cleaning floors at night. He used that time to listen to books on tape. He studied accounting. He studied marketing. He studied the psychology of people. For 2 years, Jack disappeared. He didn't go to parties. He didn't buy new clothes. He became a ghost in his own town. While everyone else was sleeping, he was in the fire. He started his third venture from his kitchen table. It wasn't flashy. It was a service-based business helping local farmers use technology to track their yields. It was difficult. It was slow. There were days when the old fear returned. There were days when a client would reject him and his heart would sink. But this time, the sting didn't last. He didn't see rejection as a sign to stop. He saw it as data. He saw it as a map telling him which way not to go. Slowly, the tide began to turn. One client turned into 5. 5 turned into 50. Jack wasn't just making money, he was building a reputation. People started talking about the man who never gave up. They saw a different look in his eyes. The desperation was gone. In its place was a quiet, unshakable calm. 3 years later, Jack stood in a high-rise office overlooking the city. He wasn't there to interview for a job. He owned the floor. He looked at his hands. They were the same hands that had gripped that steering wheel in the grocery store parking lot, but they weren't shaking anymore. Success didn't feel like a party. It felt like peace. It felt like the silence after a long, brutal war. He had finally won the battle against his own self-doubt. He went back to that small diner. The old man wasn't there, but the booth was. Jack sat in the same spot where he had once felt like a failure. He realized that the man who sat there years ago had to die so the man standing here today could live. The failure wasn't a mistake, it was the requirement. If you are listening to this and you feel like you are drowning in a sea of mistakes, listen closely. The world will try to tell you that your past defines your future. They will try to label you by your losses. But you are not your bank account. You are not your failed marriage. You are not your lost job. You are the person who survives those things. The fire is hot for a reason. It is there to melt away the person you used to be. It is there to forge the person you are meant to become. Don't run from the heat. Don't fear the fall. The world doesn't need more people who got it right the first time. The world needs people who got it wrong 1,000 times and had the courage to stand up for the 1,000th and first. Everything changes the moment you realize that failure is not the opposite of success. It is part of it. Keep going. The steel is almost ready. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to MindBridge Tales. Every story here is a lesson. Every lesson is a step toward a better life. God bless you.